Janya generally disliked killing, but it paid, and she was good at it. As the ocean churned beneath her skiff, several clicks out from the rig on the horizon, she wondered if this had been the best approach for this job. The skiff listed this way and that, and Janya didn't exactly have her sea legs, feeling nauseous with every rise and fall the small craft made in the vast ocean. She could have rigged the whole drilling station platform to blow, she thought, but the client wanted discreet and a clean getaway, and with the security out there, this was about as close as she was going to get. She looked through her scope again. Finally, some movement. The oh-so-important meeting that was taking place inside was now over, and this was Janya's window. She scanned the faces for visual confirmation. She had her target. Short, blonde, augmented jaw. That was her man. She lined up the shot, easing her breathing into a slow, steady rhythm. She squeezed the trigger and felt nothing but hunger. She wondered if she would have fish for dinner tonight. Maybe, she thought. That would be nice. Welcome to The Bad Spot, an actual play podcast in which I, Matt Risby, and I alone am playing through Ironsworn Starforged. Now, this is our 5th session, and our hero Archer Barlow has been plunged into a mystery fraught with death-defying danger. If you want to join us aboard the good ship Eclipse so you can follow along, then leave a like, subscribe, and click the bell to get notified when the next session drops. And that way, you won't miss a thing. So, where were we? Not where were we, because I've decided in the break between last week's episode and this one, I think we're going to wind the clock forward a little bit. Because the last 4 sessions took place in one day, and I almost feel like any more excitement could finish Archer off. I think it could kill the poor boy. So I think, as we wrapped things up last episode, I think Archer turned control of the ship over to Griff, and then they set a course back to Redemption. And then I think he just collapsed into his bunk and totally overwhelmed with both the relief of being out of the jungle and exhaustion. And I think he just passes straight out. So we can narratively put a break in the action and also use this natural pause to do a couple of bits of bookkeeping. The first is that we're going to spend the XP that we earn in the last session. So we completely filled in a box on our Discovery's legacy track. So that means we get 2 XP to spend, and we can make the advance move. Now, we can't acquire a new asset. That costs 3 XP, and we only have 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to upgrade one of my existing assets. Now, it's got to make narrative sense. And I've had a look, and I think what a nice upgrade would be that would tie into the narrative would be to upgrade our scavenger asset, our path. And as I said many times, including repeatedly in the last episode, Archer is cautious and analytical and doesn't like to take chances. But the kind of situation has dictated he fly in the face of that received wisdom. And I feel like the last 24 hours have changed it all for him. He had to improvise and he had to wing it to survive and make the most of what he had. He wasn't prepared when he had to hotwire the escape pod to get off the creation. He was woefully ill-equipped to fight the nuclear kangaroos at the gorge, but he adapted and he made it work. And I think I'm going to reflect this by unlocking the 3rd ability on the scavenger asset. Now this will allow us to roll plus wits or supply whenever we check our gear. We make the check your gear move, and we can take an additional +1 momentum on a hit. And I think that makes really good narrative sense. He proved to himself that he can kind of fly by the seat of his pants and survive. He didn't enjoy it a great deal, but he made it work, and he got out more or less in one piece. So it means that when we have to improvise in the field, as it were, it's going to be a pretty good option for us. Okay, secondly, we need to mark progress on our Iron Vow, as we have, by safely, in inverted commas, returning through The infested jungle on Damu's northern hemisphere, I think we've definitely reached a milestone in our quest to retrieve the databank and return it to the conduit. So you can see we are at 8 progress on that Iron Vow now, so I think we are just one step away from completing that. And I think completing that is going to be when we actually hand the thing over. And I think maybe that should be rephrased from when we hand the thing over to if. Because at the end of the last episode, we found Archer going against everything in his makeup, his code of ethics, his morals, everything. Because he started trying to hack into the databank and find out what information was held on it, which is a little out of character, shall we say. So, where were we? We have forwarded through time. But not by much. By hours, rather than days. And Archer has been asleep. He's been passed out. He's exhausted. Physically and definitely psychologically. Completely spent. His sleep is deep, but plagued with nightmarish visions of the monsters, of the explosion, of his fight with the Bannersworn, and moments from the previous day play out in this kind of awful cycle. The roar of the Alpha, the kind of crash landing and the spinning through the jungle, and holding the hand of the Bannersworn as he died. And it's that young boy's face that's the last thing he sees before he awakes with the start. And he's in his bunk. He's kind of partly undressed. For a second, I think he thinks it was probably just all a dream, some like horrible dream. And then he sits up and the pain in his ribs is back. I mean, it's duller than before, but still, it's a tight, constricting pain across his chest. And then he feels the prickle of sweat on his neck, and he's definitely back in the southern hemisphere where the humidity is oppressive and he's sticky, and then maybe he hears the rain kind of gently thrumming on the roof of the Eclipse, and in his head he's like, redemption. Shit. Still only in redemption. And he hauls himself to his feet. He's shirtless, and he kind of catches a glimpse of himself in a tall, thin kind of mirror across the room. And he looks like shit, frankly. His back is kind of blackened and bruised where he fell on the crossing stones, and his skin is a kind of grey-brown from all the mud and the ash from the crash site. He needs a shower. But he then remembers he left Griff with the databank and instructed him to have a poke around at its contents before he passed out. And I think that he remembers that now. And I think Archer being Archer, I think that there's maybe an instant pang of regret. Now he realises that in the cold light of day, that's what he's done. So maybe he hustles back to the cockpit and to see what Griff has found out, having been working on it overnight. So Barlow's now in the cockpit. He's got one hand kind of wrapped around his ribs and the other one's kind of propping him up in the doorway. And Griff is exactly where he left him, docked in his little charging station, and let's say he's got some extra wires and gubbins and whatnot plugged into him that will help attach him to the databank that's in the racking in the console. So should we say, yeah, I think the databank has got to be encrypted, right? It has to be. And I went back to check, and that first episode, when we kind of generated this databank as a MacGuffin, we rolled up the words broken and memory to kind of conjure this databank from the ether. So, and I think I said at the time, it was kind of just a fragment. So maybe what we have in this databank is actually part of a larger archive. This isn't the complete thing. This is just a piece of a bigger puzzle. But we can definitely still figure out what's on it, and from that maybe ascertain who wants it or perhaps why. But yeah, I think it has to be encrypted. It has to be. And Griff is a survey bot. He is for scouting ahead, doing scans, and he's not very good at that. So it's safe to say that hacking is not his forte. Shall we ask the Oracle if Griff has managed to hack this thing overnight? Now, how likely is it? I think that saying unlikely is charitable. So yeah, the odds are definitely not in Griff's favour. It is unlikely. So let's ask the Oracle. Has Griff managed to gain access to the databank whilst Archer was asleep? 72 is no, but only just no. Maybe he's still working on it. Maybe it's still got the old kind of spinning hourglass kind of tipping over or the little beach ball of doom if you're a Mac user. And I think Archer is like secretly relieved. I think he's like, it wasn't in his instincts to do that. And I think he's really fighting his conscience. And he could just pull the plug and cancel this, but he doesn't. He's really torn. He's really torn about wanting to find out why he had to go through the events of yesterday and who is putting him through this. Doesn't want any more to do with this thing. He just wants it out of his life. But he is torn. And he's also in very bad shape. So he's definitely been through the ringer emotionally. Towards the end of last episode, we were left with our spirit down dangerously low at 1, and we need to do something about that. So in terms of recovery, to recover physically, you just use the heal move. And one of the best moves to use when you're kind of back in a place of relative safety is the Sojourn move. But that kind of relies on being safe in a community, and I don't think that that's narratively appropriate for us, because Archer is just on his own. He doesn't fit in anywhere. And this place is super weird, like with all its like scrap worshipping pilgrims, and he knows all that's a lie as well, so that makes him extra uncomfortable. He discovered there was no miracle of redemption. That was just all hooey. So yeah, he doesn't fit into this community in any way. So I don't think we can Sojourn, which it's a real shame because that move is way more efficient in terms of replenishing your tracks. But at the Bad Spot, we are not about efficiency. We're about story. And Archer is on his own. So how is he going to raise his spirits? We are going to make the Hearten move. So Hearten says, when you socialise, share intimacy or find a moment of peace, roll plus heart. Now, we're not going to socialise, so I think we're going to find both a moment of solace and share intimacy, and I think we're going to get a bit of a look behind the curtain of Archer's psyche here. He's very much driven by loss and grief. He lost Professor Darwin through the Iron Gate, and then everything changed. And now he's out here alone searching for answers. And I think that when he needs some solace and he needs some comfort, what he needs to do to feel like his existence is worth it, that his pursuit of answers in a universe that frankly does not care, when he needs to find just some shred of comfort, anything, I think that he plays a recording of her. And I think that in the Eclipse, which is a research/surveillance ship, I think he must have hours and hours of recordings of her, like field notes, diary entries, stuff like that. And I think that he plays them to himself. I think that's what keeps him going. And I think that's what he's going to do here. I think he's going to get himself cleaned up. He's going to get a fresh set of clothes on. And then he's just going to sit with a coffee and, I don't know, like a space Nutri bar or something, and just have a moment for himself listening to her voice. And there's like no direct address in any of these recordings. These are literally recordings of her listing her findings, analysing soil samples, toxicity levels of the atmosphere, just general scientific observations. But this is all Archer has left of her. So let's see if this does the trick, and roll plus heart. Okay, that is a strong hit and a great start. I find comfort and my spirit is strengthened. So spirit bounces up to +3. That's the mechanical benefit. And I think narratively he just slows everything down and closes his eyes and cradles his coffee and listens to her voice. And it instantly lifts him. It strengthens his resolve and kind of maybe gives him a little bit of clarity, maybe. I mean, makes him assess like the general situation. What is our general situation here? We're back in Redemption. The ship is kind of a bit busted up. It's got a broken comms array. We have the databank, which was a nightmare to retrieve, frankly. And it turns out that this must be incredibly important. And I've left Griff, my survey bot, trying to hack into it. So, in a broader context, is it worth trying to find out if anyone here in Redemption is in any way curious about us? I wonder if people know about the explosion, like maybe heard it. Actually, no, that is stupid. We established it's on the other side of a mountain range in a different hemisphere, so let's scratch that notion completely. So I don't think anyone heard it, but yeah, would anyone maybe be interested that we disappeared yesterday and just returned today? Is there enough comings and goings to kind of cover that? Did anyone know that we went over the mountains? We left kind of fairly early in the morning under the cover of the shifting mists, and it is considered by the locals as the wrong side of the planet. And we also need to assess the damage to the ship, so I think we need to get out and have a little walk around to find out some stuff. So Archer checks in one more time on Griff, once again wrestling with whether or not he should pull the plug. And he doesn't. He's still torn. And he throws a jacket on and heads down to the hold and activates the ramp. Archer steps out into the spaceport, and it's late morning. I think he slept pretty long. Damu is a remote planet, and Redemption it's not exactly a thriving metropolis, but we established during the world building in Session 0 that the population is in the thousands. And there's a lot of coming and going. So I think it has a sizable spaceport, like a fairly large hangar-sized complex. And I think it is ring-shaped and open at the top, so ships can kind of drop in and fly out. And I think the opening above has kind of become a bit overgrown, so maybe from the sky from above it kind of just blends in with the jungle. And I think the rain is still coming in, and the shifting fog passes overhead by the opening in kind of little scraps of wisps of mist. And I think maybe the Eclipse is one of a dozen or so ships currently docked in the spaceport. It's definitely not busy. There's the odd kind of crew member pushing past with like maintenance equipment, and you can hear repairs being done, but it's not like bustling. There's also grub ships there. We established this was a prime spot for them. I think the majority of the vessels there are grub ships, and the other vessels are maybe all private ships that bring the pilgrims to Damu, kind of day trips as it were. Should we assess the damage on our ship first of all? Let's do that. So we established via the Oracle the Eclipse wasn't badly damaged in the blast, but the comms were definitely out when we got back. And if the comms are out, we can't hail other ships or announce our intentions when we try and go to a new place. And we do need to get to a new place. Where we're going to... Where is it again? Let's have a look. Concord, that's where we're going, yes. Deep Space Salvage Outpost of Concord. Because that is where we think we'll find the conduit. So yeah, we definitely need our comms array. So how bad is the damage? Shall we gather information? I think that's probably the most appropriate move here. So maybe we kind of do a circle of the ship and kind of take a walk around. There's no one immediately kind of checking us out or seems suspicious of us. And I think maybe we pull a fold down ladder and kind of climb up to the top and see how bad it is. So let's gather information. Roll plus wits. Okay, that is a weak hit. So we bump our momentum up by 1. But what we discover complicates our quest. So what can that be? Well, firstly, let's get to the array. It's damaged, I think, but not kind of totally beyond repair. I think it's something I could do myself. But the complication, yeah, what is it? Well, we had the radioactive monsters all over the ship, didn't we? They were like clambering all over it. And I think maybe as Archer is looking at the comms array, and this array is just like, I don't know, like a little antenna and a dish or something, just a small part of the ship, but it's important. He can kind of start to see the claw marks on the wings that the beast's made. And I think they look pretty bad. They look just cosmetic, but they look bad. And he kind of follows them along the wings and then down the length of the ship, and then he kind of sees just how lucky he was to get away in one piece. And then I think he hears a voice from down below, and it says, "Fucking hell." And I think our complication is that the claw marks are all over the ship, and Archer just didn't notice when he stepped out. And I think we've drawn a little bit of attention. I think down below There's maybe a couple of grubs who have maybe just arrived at the spaceport, and they've stopped to take a look at the eclipse because it is noticeably damaged in a really unusual way. And Archer looks down at them, and there's two, let's say, and let's roll up a detail to each. Now, the first one, let's ask the Oracle. So 14 is armed. Okay, so everyone's armed in this world. So maybe he's kind of obviously armed, like he's got something like big on him, like maybe like a massive machete type thing that he uses to hack through the foliage. And I think they're the one that I heard from up above, and I did a very rough Cockney male voice for them, so I think that's their vibe. So I think he's like super wide in stature, kind of broad and thick-necked, and he's got kind of pale, milky white skin that's been kind of reddened and blistered by the heat. And the other one is 73 is sickly. They do not look good. This climate does not agree with them, perhaps. Running a fever, maybe kind of looking a bit gaunt. Let's randomly assign a gender. Female, male, or non-binary, D100, and we'll split it evenly in that order. 30 is female, so she does not look good. And she does not look like she's having a great time. So, yeah, maybe they haven't just arrived. Maybe they're done for the day and they're coming back. So they're out all night in the jungle, and now they're turning in. And I think the one with the machete is maybe holding the other one up, kind of propping her up. And she's had a rough night by the looks of things. And I think I'd like to use this opportunity to establish something about grub culture. We talked about a code that they had, and I kind of wonder if there was something about how they appeared that kind of tied them together, and it maybe would be something that Archer doesn't share that makes him stand out even more. Like something like tattoos. Is that too obvious? I think it probably is, but I kind of like it because I had this thought that maybe they tattooed themselves with the kind of sectors they've worked. And maybe each time a grub crew does a job somewhere, it's almost like they chart it like a map across their bodies. So the sickly one, she's really heavily tattooed just on one arm. She has got a dense full sleeve, all these little points kind of plotted out across her kind of dark brown skin. She's maybe spent a long time like working one sector. And yeah, maybe that's why she doesn't feel so good. She's not built for the heat. She's not built for this kind of climate. But the other guy, like, he's shirtless, and he has points kind of inked all over his chest and across the span of his arms. He's been around, and he sees Archer, and he's like, "What the hell's made this mess?" I think there's in the rule book there's a stat block for something called Gnawlings. I didn't kind of read it too much, but I think they're like space rats who will eat your ship. And he continues, "This ain't no Gnawlings, too big. Look at that." And he's kind of now tracing the gouges with his fingers. So what's Archer going to say? I don't want to draw too much attention to myself here. Maybe as the two grubs stopped, maybe there's some other people passing by who are kind of starting to rub a neck, and he kind of needs to move them on. So should we drop a little white lie to appease them, perhaps? Lying never hurt anybody. So I think we'll make the compel move here. I think that's going to be appropriate. It's going to be a lie, so this is rolling plus shadow. Okay, strong hit. Good start. Again, mark another momentum, so that's up to 4. And I think Archer is just going to pull a sector name just completely out of thin air here. So let's roll one up. 21 is Crimson. 3 is Anvil. So Archer's like, "Have you been through the Crimson Anvil?" And they both shake their heads. Of course, they haven't. He's just made it up. And Archer says, "Well," and he motions to the claw marks, "you really don't want to." And I kind of think that makes the armed one laugh, and the other one is in no fit state for Barlow's comedy. And I wonder if perhaps we can kind of roll this kind of pattern into something else, kind of convert it into something. I'm not going to build a relationship with them. These these are passing characters, but maybe I can ask them if they can help with repairs or something. Maybe get me moving a bit quicker. So yeah, I think I'm going to use compel again, but I'm kind of not lying. I'm being sincere. I'm going to try and kind of charm or encourage, as it says here in this instance, to get them to help me with the repairs. I'm asking nicely. It's not Archer's strong point, so we're going to roll plus heart. Okay, that's a weak hit. Good news, my momentum goes up to 5. Bad news, this is going to cost us. So I think Archer says, and it's not just the paint job, my comms are shot, and I think I need some technical space bump here. I need to run a bypass, and I could do with a jump if you can. And I think that because of this weak hit, the armed one kind of instantly narrows his eyes and kind of views me with suspicion. And he's like, a jump on a bypass, eh? Yeah, we could do that, yeah, but why would we? And I think it's obvious. It's obvious they're going to ask something of me. And I think that the obvious thing for them to ask of me is for some space medicine, some supplies for the sickly one. She's clearly got space dysentery or whatnot, and maybe I've got some tablets back in the med bay, and I kind of look kind of fairly clean cut to them. So I think that's what they demand of me. They say, well, we'll help you, but you've got to give up some space drugs. So I will take a hit to my supply here. I think that's a fair reflection of the trade. My supply is down to 1. So yeah, we're kind of running on fumes here. So the armed one, I think, agrees, and let's just kind of turn it into a bit of a montage. I exchange some medication for a bypass. He's going to give me a jump on this bypass. So yeah, maybe their ship's next to mine, in the parking space next to mine, and there's a case of running a cable between the 2 ships and connecting them to bring my comms back online. I don't know how it works, but that's how it works. And there's not much of an exchange between the 2 of us. We're both just grateful of the help either way. I think the sick one was probably in a worse condition than it first appeared, and let's just apply that weak hit to this whole kind of encounter. There's some suspicion from their side. I think I maybe told them that I'm out surveying and they don't 100% believe me, but yeah, not enough for them to do anything about it. And they aren't too fussed about asking me too many pressing questions. And I think the repairs to the comms are straightforward enough, but it speeds it up that I've got them helping me. And now we're fixed up and we can fly, but we are dangerously low in terms of supply here. And when we travel through space, which is what we need to do to get to Concord, supply is something that we are definitely going to need. But I also want to get moving. I really do. I don't want to be on this planet a minute longer, frankly. So what to do here? I'm very close to completing my Iron Vow if I can just get to Concord. But setting off with a dangerously low supply is not the greatest idea. So I could resupply here. I could make the resupply move, but it's not like there's a shop or anything. I just asked some strangers to help me with repairs. It's not like I can go and just buy some more space supplies, and I don't really have anything to barter with. But I am a scavenger, and my path of scavenging gives me a pretty tasty boost when resupplying by scavenging a wreck. So maybe in this spaceport there is maybe an abandoned or wrecked ship. Is that likely? I think it's probably quite likely, but let's say 50-50. Let's ask the Oracle. Is there an abandoned or wrecked ship in the hangar? 64 is yes. Okay, so cool. Right. Maybe in the far corner of the hangar there's this kind of medium-sized ship, about the same size as the Eclipse, and it has been stripped pretty much bare from the outside. Now, the paneling and the weaponry and the engines are all gone. It is pretty much just a chassis, like a skeleton. But I'm not looking for those things. And I'm not just going to interject with the rules here for a second. I'm not saying that I'm just going to board the ship, roll against my highest stat with this buff with my asset, and just say, I find medicine. That's not how this works. Narratively, I think that maybe on the Eclipse, I have a very simple machine that helps, manufacture or synthesize basic treatments or drugs, kind of like an espresso machine, but it makes kind of anesthetic, or the stuff that went in that kind of that pen thing that I jabbed into my side before. And maybe on this wreck I could find a part or an ingredient that helps that machine produce them quicker, or I can find some scraps of medical compounds that are in discarded canisters or whatnot, or there's something I can cobble together into something usable. Supply in this game is abstract, so we're just going to go with it. So I don't need to ask permission from anyone in the hangar. I've seen several people kind of milling about, seeing if there's anything of value there, and walking on. So I just climb aboard, and I will head straight to what I think would have been, because there's nothing much there anymore, what would have been the kind of treatment area or living quarters. So I'm going to roll plus wits to resupply by scavenging or crafting on a wreck. So I get +1. That is a strong hit, which should be expected when you're adding +5 to the roll. But in addition, that is also a match. And a match in this instance triggers something else here. So first, let's apply the mechanical benefit. So my supplies go up to a much healthier +3. And I can take +2 momentum for the match. And mark 2 ticks on my Discovery's legacy track. So reading the asset, it says, when you resupply by scavenging a wreck, ruin, or abandoned site, add +1 and take +1 momentum on a hit. On a strong hit with a match, you also find something of unique value, significance, or function. Envision the nature of this discovery, take +2 momentum and mark 2 ticks on your Discovery's legacy track. So not only is a match just great anyway, a match with this asset is going to mean that I'm going to discover something unique. This is one hell of a start to a session. We've rolled a couple of strong hits. It's going well. What could possibly go wrong? Let's envision what we find. So let's say I'm poking around this small cabin. Whatever the ship was, it certainly had a very small crew because its medical facilities amount to what's essentially just a cupboard. So maybe the ship was more focused towards combat or something, because the scavengers who have been at it have largely ignored the stuff I've come in there for, and they've gone straight for the armor and the weapons, which is lucky for me. So I'm surprised to discover maybe kind of like a couple of half-full canisters of this gas, maybe, which is what's used to synthesize that anesthetic I administered to myself. And also there's maybe some more general supplies. Maybe there's like some freeze-dried ration packs or something squirreled away in there somewhere, and they're probably out of date, but they'll do. I'm pretty thrilled with the haul, and I'm counting my lucky stars that some poor bastard is probably dead in the jungle somewhere, leaving this ship to be picked over by us scavengers. But we rolled a match, and my asset has something that triggers on a match. So what discovery do I make, and what could that be? Ooh, could it be? Now, cast your minds back. Remember back to session 0 when we were envisioning the ship. We were envisioning the eclipse. And I think I picked off a table of some features that I wanted, and then I rolled some more random ones to give it a bit of flavour. And I rolled this thing that said, and let me find it. It said, strange symbols are scrawled on the deck and bulkheads in the main corridor. Do you remember that? Well, what if, as I'm closing the door to this cupboard, hands full of what the other grubs have deemed meaningless, I see another one of those symbols. Yeah, like definitely the same symbol. Like, it's not even in debate, it's the same. And what does this symbol look like? Let's say it's a circle, and then inside the circle there's another circle, and there's like maybe a sword type shape, a cross or a sword kind of passing through it, and maybe like 2 more circles below. It's abstract, but it's definitely the same as what's on the eclipse. I drop what I'm holding, and I run my fingers across the symbol. Like in the eclipse, it's actually like carved into the metal, like etched into the metal very deliberately. And I did say, I think, that the professor was obsessed with these symbols. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't, who's to say? But let's say that now. And let's say I instantly get this hit of recognition. I'm staring at this symbol the way the professor used to. They used to obsess over them. And was that part of what drove us to the Iron Gate, or led us to the Iron Gate? Who knows? What I do know is that this cupboard door is coming with me. And also, I think I'm going to mark a tick on my background bow, because I think that's definitely discovering a clue. Even if said clue is hard to decipher, I think that's definitely a clue. So, tick on the background bow. There we go. First progress only. 39 more ticks to go, and we'll wrap that one up neatly. Okay, so yes, that was exciting. So I head back to the ship, to the Eclipse, emboldened with my discovery, and my mind is racing with these possibilities and questions. And I then check the symbols in the corridors against the one I just found, and they're by a different hand, but they are definitely the same. This is a tasty discovery. This is a juicy clue, and I'm into it. So we have successfully resupplied, about as good as we're going to get. So I think we need to bounce, and I think we just need to get out of here. So, what about the databank? I can't just give it to the conduit with Griff still plugged into it. That will give the game away and look somewhat suspicious, I feel. So, shall we see if on my return Griff has actually cracked it? Is it more likely that he's cracked it? I don't think it's any more likely, so the odds will be the same. And if it's no, we will just pull the plug and get going. 87's yes. 87 is yes. Griff, you little tinker. It only took you 12 to 14 hours, but he's managed to crack into this databank. So if we've got ourselves a little bit of a flashpoint here, what is Archer going to do here? So yeah, let's envision this. He kind of moves back into the ship. He's kind of excited. He's kind of with the haul from the wreck, and enters the cockpit and fully expects to see Griff kind of whirring away, still doing nothing. But instead, the light on the databank is green, and the console screen flashes up a message that says something like "Data retrieval complete," and then it says "Proceed?" ? So the question is, does Archer proceed? I think he was definitely torn before, but maybe this discovery of that symbol has sparked her confidence in him. Maybe misplaced confidence, let's be honest, but confidence nonetheless. And I think he hits enter on the keyboard. Damn right he wants to proceed. So I think this definitely needs to be a roll, because this is not without consequence. I have asked a survey bot to hack an antique databank, and it's a databank that I'm about to hand over to a powerful, very shady underworld figure. So I would say this is very much dangerous. So I think this is a face danger move, because I am attempting something risky, and it is definitely not with expertise, because Griff is doing the heavy lifting. So deception then? I think that feels right. I think that's a roll plus shadow. Face danger, roll plus shadow. That's a miss. Oh, Archer Barlow. Why did you have to stick your nose in? And my momentum's not going to bail me out here either. So I am going to have to get my knife and fork and eat this. I think this is bad. I think narrative-wise, if we go by what the move says, I think I get access. I get this momentary success. And I'm going to find out what's on this thing. So let's do that first. Let's ask the Oracle for some clues. Maybe we will just roll on theme and focus. So 83 is strategy. Strategy, okay. And 31 is fleet. Fleet. Strategy fleet. So I retrieved this databank off the creation, and that was a military ship that was posing as a missionary ship. And it was doing so because it was transporting a deadly high-tech weapon through space. But during its mission, there was an uprising and it crashed after shooting down its sister ship. And maybe this databank holds details of where it was going, perhaps? Where it was going to deliver the weapon to. Maybe that's it. Maybe the creation was supposed to join a larger fleet, perhaps? One that was amassing in some far-off sector, perhaps? Yeah, okay, yeah, we'll say that. As images kind of flash up quickly on the screen, that is what I can gather in the short time that I'm kind of scanning over the words. The creation of a mission, and it was to rendezvous with the asset, in inverted commas, at a location that I do not discover in the time that I have access to this information. So what is the asset? It's definitely not on the creation anymore, because I might have blown it up. So whatever it was, it must have been extracted at some point in the past, or people wouldn't still be looking for this. And maybe this databank is the best clue to discovering where it may have gone. But this was a big fat miss that I rolled, so my success was fleeting, and we're going to get a dire turn of events, as I must pay the price. I'm just going to pick from the pay the price table here, and I think the option that's jumping out at me is your action causes collateral damage or has an unattended effect. Is the databank fried? Did I break it? I suppose that could get me out of trouble with the conduit, I guess. I could tell them I just found it this way, damaged in the blast. Or I could tell the truth and say that I actually saw the information that was on it and they need to keep me alive if they want to hear it. No, I think that could just lead to me being tortured. That's a terrible idea. Let's not do that. So, yeah, I think the screen goes blank and the lights go out on the data bank in the rack, and I turn to Griff. Well, yeah, that's not good. And he doesn't know. I turn back to the rack and the lights in the data bank come back on, and well, kind of one light does. It's just a slowly fading amber light, kind of pulsing slowly. The screen on the console reads, "Unauthorized decryption detected." I think we've triggered a failsafe in there somewhere. I think it's not taking kindly to our poking around, and it shut itself down, and I think it's now starting to emit this kind of constant beep. I think this is going to be super obvious to whoever looks at it that we tried to hack it. So what are we going to do now? What are we going to do now? I have certainly compromised myself here, haven't I? Am I going on the lam? Am I going to go on the run? Not a great option, I don't think. I am already on the run from the Griffin Institute, or at least I think I am. So let's not make that worse. I think I'm just going to have to stop messing about, aren't I, and own this one. And hopefully they don't cut my toes off and torture me and then chuck me in a bin. Hopefully the fact that I recovered it safely could be enough to spare me, possibly. Maybe I should just write the conduit on the databank, fly by the station and just throw it out the window and then speed off, maybe. Kind of a drive-by drop-off. But no, I think what drives Archer is grief and loss and trying to find answers to the questions of what happened to the professor. And I think that is more than reason enough to finally make the contact. Remember, I haven't actually met the conduit. They might be super chill. Who knows? They might be lovely. Yeah, might have a few drinks, see where it goes. Who knows? Okay, so we're off to, where is it? Concord. That's right. We're off to Concord. Why can't I remember that? Okay, we need to get our shit together. So I unplug the data bank and stick it in my satchel. Maybe it'll stop bleeping in there if I don't think about it. Out of sight. Out of mind, very much so. So yeah, we fire up the Eclipse. The E-drive is fully charged, and we are set fair. So the ship judders and starts to rise up out of Redemption Spaceport. And take one last look back at Redemption Valley, this huge, deep scar in the green landscape where the faithful worship what turned out to be a big fat lie. On the horizon, the mountains and the northern hemisphere beyond, and I really don't want to dwell too long on what I experienced over there as we gain altitude, driving up through the mist and through the rain and into the atmosphere. And as Damu gets smaller and smaller behind us, you can really see how two-toned the planet is, and as pretty as it looks from up here, I never want to go back there ever again. Archer plunges the E-drive handle flat against the console, and the pinky red swirls of the drift dance like ribbons around the cockpit window, and then they begin to streak brighter and bolder as the Eclipse shudders and then jumps into the drift. So let's make a move. let's make a move. We established in session 0 that there was a passage between Damu and Concord, which makes sense. Damu is a kind of a grub hotspot, and Concord is a salvage station, so it's a well-travelled route. So the move is going to be set a course, which is what we do when we know that what the route is. It's not us blazing a trail and kind of forging away. So this is a roll plus supply. So can you see how important it was that we resupplied in that spaceport? Because rolling +3 is much better than rolling +1. So let's make the move. Okay, strong hit. Excellent news. That is +1 momentum, so we're up to 7, and we might need that. So it says here the situation favours us as we arrive. So let's envision what Concord looks like. Should we roll up a few details? Ask the Oracle for a visual clue about what this place is like. So 25 is built within terrain or asteroid. That is very cool. Okay, yeah, so let's say we drop out of the drift. And there in front of us is just this monstrous hulk of rock hanging in space. But like maybe half the rock's mass has been overtaken by these man-made structures. Maybe like buildings on top of buildings, built on top of buildings. And it's ramshackle and kind of almost a bit like a industrial shanty town, like no forward planning. It was probably just like at one point like a small one building facility that expanded too quickly and grew, and people just threw up whatever was needed on top of whatever wasn't needed. And what is our initial contact? That's also a roll, but it says on the strong hit the situation favors us, so I will just pick and I'll say neutral/automated. So I think I'm immediately hailed on the console, and it's like a text that says it's asking me to transmit my ship details and access codes and whatnot. And had we not fixed that comms array, we'd not have been able to do this, and I'd rather not get shot down the first time I go to space in this game. So I transmit the details, and I receive another message to say, like, proceed to loading bay number 7, which is mad considering that it's all just a big jumble of buildings and structures. So finding number 7 could be a whole episode in itself. But yeah, is there anything else I want to learn before I land here? I don't think there is. So okay, all right, yeah. So maybe it takes a few passes for me to figure out where landing bay number 7 is, but I do. And as I approach, you can just see how kind of haphazard this place is. Like landing bay 7 is built on top of landing bay 5, but it's underneath landing bay 12, and it's all just this heavy industrial architecture. There's stacks and pipes billowing smoke and soot into space, and everything has this dirty, oily look, even the people. The Eclipse is like orange, we established that, and it stands out, but it won't be too much longer until it turns the same colour as everything else here. It's noisy, it's incredibly busy. There are hundreds of ships in and out every minute. There are sparks flying from repairs and bodge jobs happening left, right, and centre. And there's this thick petrol-like smell that's kind of eye-watering. It's kind of really chemically, and then I think there's these little kind of motorized carts buzzing around, driven by little kids, like little street urchins, who all try and kind of race to the newest ship that's landed. And these carts, they're like little haulers. They've got little trailers behind them, and the urchins are just trying to get the scrap loaded onto their carts in the hope of getting a juicy tip from the grub who's salvaged their unloading and hauling around. And I think maybe there's like 3 of these carts like instantly on Archer as he steps out of the Eclipse, but he waves them away as he hasn't got anything to unload, which is confusing to these little haulers because there's no real reason to come here without having salvage on board. This isn't a holiday resort, after all. So I think they kind of buzz around him for a little bit, and then they circle the Eclipse in their carts a few times as Archer walks away, but there's nothing doing, so they turn their attention to the next ship, and they're off. And I think Archer gets a few looks from the hangar crew, and maybe from some of the grubs too. There's some heavily inked people here, some with not much skin left at all to mark new locations. But he kind of keeps his head down and kind of walks across the landing bay into a corridor beyond. And I think he's going to try and get some food or something. Maybe find like a canteen or a mess hall or something. And I don't think that's difficult. I think as the door closes behind him, the smell of oil and grease is instantly replaced by the smell of a different type of grease. The great smell of fried food drifting down the corridor. And he follows the corridor and the smell a short distance, and he kind of finds this kind of big, wide open food court type area, and it's kind of multi-floored, and the doors all around the perimeter. And I think figuring out like where he came from in his corridor, all of the doors must lead out to each of the landing bays that have just been kind of shambolically bolted onto this structure. And it's a big hall. There's vendors all around the outside. There's hawkers kind of selling various snacks, and kind of there's a mixture of like long communal benches with people sat and tables, and there's just bits of machinery and kind of abandoned gear dotted around that people are also sitting on, kind of chowing down on whatever space slop they've chosen before kind of hitting the drift and going out scavenging again. So I think Archie keeps it simple, and he kind of just gets a coffee from the nearest vendor and kind of stands off to the side of the room. I think what's our play here? I think we're going to kind of scan the crowd to see, firstly, if there's anyone here he recognises. Because if there is, and they kind of like, hey, Archer, that might kind of not blow his cover, but like it's gonna compromise him, I think. So that's the first thing he's looking for, and then I think he's maybe seeing if anyone is looking for him or at him, or if anyone's noticed him. So we're sticking to the side. We're going to roll plus wit. So okay, that's a weak hit. So our momentum bounces up to 8, and I gain a new insight. But something complicates my quest. So what do I discover? So I think luckily, I mean, it was a hit, so I think luckily there's no one out here that I know. No faces strike me as familiar, which is comforting, I guess. It pays to be unpopular, I guess. But I noticed that there is some very heavy security dotted around the hangar. So there's like the station crew, the people who work here, and then the vast majority of the population here are grubs. But I noticed that in amongst them is some very well-armed, very kind of professional-looking security, like most likely mercenaries, trying but failing to blend in. It's obvious to me anyway that this is like a personal security detail, and they're watching the room, and they're kind of scanning the faces, and they have like a sidearm, which is standard, but like maybe they have like also some kind of like baton, like a cattle prod type thing. Like a kind of a stun baton, something that looks like it would administer a fairly nasty jolt. And I think that, yeah, maybe across the room from me, like at a table on the far side, there's suddenly raised voices, and then like a bit of a kerfuffle, and then 2 grubs kind of stand up, they get to their feet, they puff their chests out, and then they start pushing and shoving each other, and then a fight breaks out. This kind of ugly scuffle that's over before it really started, but this is like common in places like this. Like grub life is rough and ready, and punches are very often thrown over claims or halls that are disputed or whatever, or just even kind of dueling egos. This isn't unusual, and they can be kind of nasty and violent, but Archer isn't watching that fight. He's watching the security detail, and they don't do anything. They aren't security for the place, so I ascertain they must be security for a person. And Archer doesn't know exactly why, but he just knows that they have to be here for the conduit. And they are hired guns, here to protect a VIP. But why in the food hall with all these grubs? Does that mean the conduit is in the room? And that's when I hear a voice behind me. And what kind of voice? A feminine voice. Hello, book. And I turn and say without thinking, don't call me that. And before me is the conduit. Let's roll. She is attractive. And she is imposing. Okay, so I think that the conduit is both empirically attractive as well as being attractive to Archer. And she is physically imposing. And I don't think I had too many assumptions about who the conduit was or if they were even real, but here she is. And I am picturing a short woman with kind of shorn dark hair, kind of light brown skin, a compact, kind of muscular physique. And she has this kind of disarming smile and dark brown eyes, kind of this soft, heart-shaped face. And she wears like nondescript spacer gear, kind of heavy combat boots and trousers, and she wears this tight t-shirt that kind of shows how lithe and powerful she is. And on first sight, I would say that it appears very much that if you fucked around, you would very definitely find out. And I think she looks at me and she tilts her head and she flashes a little smile at me and says, "I thought he'd be taller." And with that, Archer feels a hand grip his shoulder from behind, and a short, sharp jolt of electricity courses through his neck. And then everything goes black. Thank you a million times for watching. Well, it looks like we are right back in the soup now. Archer's curiosity has landed him in some real trouble. And we've finally come face to face with the conduit, whose databank I may well have corrupted when I tried to hack into it. So if that's not a bad shake, I do not know what is. Please leave a like and subscribe to this channel if you've not done so already, and push the little bell icon to be notified of when the next video drops. I hope you liked this week's Tale from the Drift that opened the episode. Once again, it's a little bit of flash fiction that I write using a few prompts from the oracles. Once again, those prompts I rolled for inspiration are in the description below. Submissions are still very much open if you have access to the preview edition. We have already received some submissions, which is hugely exciting. So expect to hear those opening up episodes very shortly. If you want to have a crack, please do get in touch via the email address on the screen now, and I will let you know the parameters for submission. Until next week, farewell and safe passage.